Oh, I think they like me. Yup, in my white tee, sipping on some iced tea. You could be just like me. What's up, my dudes? We got the 2023 San Diego RFMX Simulator Pro Track review. Okay, let's get in here and check this bad boy out. So, I'm sure you're probably expecting another RF rant. Why are you still doing the road system? Yada, yada, yada. In fact, that's actually not what this video is going to be about. Whoa, Spency Boy caught you off guard. No, actually, this track right here, even though it still doesn't have any pre-made, it's still, no ruts, no pre-made roughness, nothing like that. But one thing I will say about this track is when it comes to the jump scaling and the obstacle scaling, this is probably some of the best kind of scaling that they've had for like a couple, 3 or 4 years. You know what I mean? Like, this is more down the vibe of what I would say like their best track scaling was from last year. So this is definitely better than their first round this year and their Oakland round this year. They still ran it on MXM because they do it a week before the real life one, okay? But nonetheless, the big thing about this track right here that I want all you boys to understand, and same way I want RF to understand it as well, is this is how you make a track that doesn't feel like it was entirely made for a 250. You see what I'm saying? This kind of jump scaling and obstacle scaling, Spency Boy getting gnarly in the whoops, bro. But this kind of scaling right here, it's like it actually feels like it was somewhat made for a 450. And I haven't felt that on their tracks in a really long time. So that was a really nice thing to feel on this track. It's just like, it just gets to the point where on a lot of their other tracks that they've been making, it's like when you're on a 450, you don't even have to huck the bike to even hit any kind of rhythm on the track. You just hold the gas down, and that's basically it. You know what I mean? But this track right here, you do have to huck the bike on a 450. Okay, another thing we need to talk about on this track, notice this right here. Tripling the finish line jump, okay? This is all good and fine and dandy. I'm all good with that. But the problem is their previous round, their Oakland round, they actually had an invisible wall on the finish line, so it just prevented you from being able to triple the finish line just on their very previous round. Go ride on the track, you'll see what I'm saying. Try to hit that finish line on the RF Oakland 2023. Try to hit it as hard as you can to triple, instead of just doubling the finish line jump, try to actually triple to that next jump, and you will hit a magical invisible wall that will kill all of your excitement and fun factor on the track. Now they've changed their ways because we get here to this San Diego track, and there is no invisible wall on the finish line jump. RF, you kind of confuse me a little bit, bro. It's like, are you going to do the invisible walls? Are you not going to do the invisible walls? Are you only going to do it on the times where you think that the unrealistic big jump would actually be faster? Is that the only time you're going to do invisible walls? Because you're kind of confusing me at this point. You have the exact same sort of scenario on your round 2 Oakland and your round 3 San Diego, where you could potentially triple the finish line jump, and on your Oakland track you have a magical invisible wall that prevents you from doing that. It just totally stops you from doing that. But then you get to the very next round at San Diego and you can triple that finish line, with ease. There is no invisible wall at all. So I just don't understand what RF is doing with that whole thing. I know I just made a video on that where they had invisible walls on a bunch of their outdoor rounds from last year. So it's just kind of confusing. It's like, do you even know what you're doing anymore, RF, on the invisible wall thing? I'm confused. Or is this like, okay, now you're going to stop the invisible walls? Is that what this means? The whoops are pretty cool on this track. They got them where you can literally jump the entire whoop section in like 2 jumps. Like 2 jumps. That's kind of fun. I haven't really been on a track like that in a while, and the whoops are big enough to where if you try to skim them, it's going to be like, it kind of balances itself out where jumping them might actually be faster because you can jump into the first whoop, and that's what allows you to just do 2 jumps to jump over all the whoops. You're doing like a 6 and a 9 jump through the whoops, you know what I mean? But either way, yeah, the biggest takeaway of this track right here is this is a lot more like it when it comes to jump scaling. See how I'm having to huck the bike to get the bike to triple out of some of these corners? Even on a 450, it doesn't just take throttle like the Anaheim 1 track and a bunch of their tracks from last year. You know, it takes, you know, good throttle, good traction, and hucking the bike to get it to jump some of these jumps. Okay, that's how you know you have a pro-level jump scaling track. Now, if you're going around a track on a 450 and you're hitting all the triple ends without ever even having to huck the bike, you're just on the gas and you're just kind of controlling the bike over the jump face, you're not really having to huck or lean or pull back or do anything, that's when you know it's more of a 250 built kind of track. But again, we're on a video game here, so if you build the entire pro track around a 250, yeah, all of your 250 pros and all of your 450 amateurs and beginners are going to love a track like that because they can get around it with ease. But that's not a pro track. Whereas this right here is more of a pro style, you know, scaling to a track. I felt like their Supercross triple was still maybe just a little bit short, but as far as everything else, like the terrain of it, obviously not talking about ruts and pre-made or anything like that. You can still pop off, as you can see. Let me play this particular one back, just kind of show you a little bit here. I think I just went right around here to this one spot. But, yeah, I mean, look how big these berms are now compared to where they were, like, at Anaheim 1 from last year. You remember how fucking small those berms were? They were ridiculous. So at least RF is getting a little bit of common sense here with, you know, slowly but surely they are somewhat working theirself back to some kind of a terrain to a pro track, you know what I mean? But okay, so you can see right here, see how I tripled this finish line jump? So you can easily do this. No sort of invisible wall here, but if you go to the Oakland track, the track that was just the round before this one, and you try to do this same thing on the finish line jump, it's even smaller than this. That's the other part of it. The finish line on Oakland's even smaller to triple it. But there's an invisible wall because they feel like you're going to try to start doing that every lap because you're going to gain an advantage with that. But that's just part of the jumps. I mean, that's just, I don't understand. So this is like direct proof that RF is literally all over the place when it comes to if they're going to do invisible walls, if they're not going to do invisible walls, because jumping a finish line, I mean, that is not a very frequent thing that happens in real life. So you would expect RF, if they're doing invisible walls, you would expect them to do it on pretty much every single finish line that you could potentially triple. You see what I'm saying? I don't think there should be any invisible walls. It don't make no sense in the first place. So I don't know. This may be a sign that they've learned their lesson with the invisible walls. We'll see over the next, multiple rounds. We'll see if they have any more. But it's like you come through here, you hit this triple, you can over jump it to a certain amount. So there's kind of a little bit of skill gap there. Then you got to really get the speed to huck up and triple out of this right here. Okay. But it's all in the scaling of it, guys. But then you hit this corner, you got to triple up out of here. Okay. You got kind of different size jumps. You know what I mean? Then you get right here. This jump right here is a little tricky to triple up out of. It's like somehow on this track right here, they just managed to make specifically those like those three main rhythm sections, the triple in, you know, right out of the corner, that would be a little bit tricky on a 250. You know, if you weren't really carrying your speed around, you know, and really paying attention to hucking the bike, I could see where a lot of the dudes on a 250, you know, wouldn't be able to triple in all those rhythms every lap. But on a 450, it makes it fun. It makes it skill gapped. It makes it where you can separate yourself from an average Joe. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know if that's from how close they put the jumps right out of the corner. I don't know if it's how tight they made the corner. I don't know exactly what it is, but all I'm saying is this feels way better than like their first 2 rounds this year. Feels way better than a lot of their tracks from last year. You know, this is definitely some of their best work that they've had the past couple years, just as far as general, like, jump scaling, specifically on the rhythm section jumps. And just the whole track as a whole, scaling-wise, allowing you to pick up more speed, you know, whether you're trying to jump through these whoops, or you're trying to skim them, or you're over-jumping some of these smaller triples, or whatever the case may be. It's like there's enough room on the track, the scaling is big enough to where you can separate yourself with raw speed, okay? Whereas a bunch of their tracks from last year, and even their Anaheim 1 track to a sense this year, it's like almost like you couldn't even separate yourself speed-wise because everybody was just wide open everywhere, hitting every jump perfect, and there was no separation. But this track does have some separation to it. Now, I think this track would have been a lot better had it had a couple of inside ruts, had some pre-made, because, you know, MX Simulator doesn't really have like that reflexy, cushiony kind of feeling to it. So it just would have been cool to have seen a little bit more character put into the track, and I think it would have been a lot more fun. But overall, compared to what they have been doing, you know, I mean, I would say this is some of their better stuff that they've been doing. You know what I mean? This track right here is definitely a good step in the right direction. We'll see if they can keep this energy up. I doubt it. Typically, you know, they'll have like their 3rd or 4th round to be pretty good. They'll kind of figure it out, but then they'll revert everything and they'll start going back to smaller scaling, and the 250 pros and the 450 amateurs start to complain too much. Like, I can't hit these triple ends. The whoops are too big, RF. I can't get through the whoops. And then by the time you get to like round 5 or 6, RF has basically reverted on all the progression that they made, and they tone down the whoops, and then they tone down the rhythms, and then they make it more for a 250 again. That's kind of what they did last year, just keeping it real. So I hope to not see a repeat of that. But anyways, so yeah, that's my opinion on this San Diego MX Sim track. Definitely let me know down in the comments what you boys thought about it, and I'll see you dudes on the next one.